Hi guys, this is Kathie from the Nature Foundation again, and I have Steve Layman from the Charlottesville Astronomical Society to talk to us today about an amazing phenomenon that's going to happen tonight. And it's a full moon, but not just any old full moon. We're going to talk about the supermoon. Is that correct, Steve?
That's it, yeah.
But before we get started on that, I actually posted on Facebook anybody that might have questions about the moon, because we have an authority here, and it would be kind of fun to answer some questions. And I actually had some homeschool kids with some questions for you, Steve. So is it okay if we start with that?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, well, the first one is a cutie. She wanted to know if the moon was made out of cheese.
No, the moon is not made out of cheese. The moon is actually made out of a lot of the same stuff that the Earth is made out of, because scientists currently think that the moon came about because a large body planet, maybe the size of Mars, which is about half the size of Earth, at some point early in the solar system slammed into the Earth. And when that happened, everything got really hot, and a lot of material just kind of flew out into space, and it started to coalesce into a ball. And because that stuff came from the Earth, it's got a lot of the same material. So a lot of rocks that we think of, like basalts, which are basically kind of volcanic kind of rocks, those are found both on the moon and the Earth. So kind of one and the same.
Okay, excellent. So no to the cheese.
No to the cheese.
Okay, and then another question was, how many people have gone to the moon?
So between 1969 and 1972, there were 12 men who walked on the moon. In the Apollo program, started in July of 1969 with Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin is still alive. There are 4 of the original moonwalkers still alive. Buzz Aldrin, who was in Apollo 11, David Scott, Apollo 15, Charlie Duke, Apollo 16, and Harrison Schmitt, who was also a geologist. He was in Apollo 17, the final Apollo mission.
Okay, woohoo! And then lastly, why are there different colors of the moon, I guess is what they're asking.
So there are different colors of the moon because when we look at the moon, we're looking at it through our atmosphere. And if you think about the fact that if you look straight ahead, you're looking at more of our atmosphere than if you look straight up. If you look straight up, you're looking through about 60 miles of air or atmosphere. If you're looking straight ahead, you could be looking through hundreds or thousands of miles. And so what happens is that the light from the moon gets scattered, and what we end up seeing is most of the reds or the oranges, especially when the moon is close to the horizon. As it rises in the night sky, then you're almost always seeing it as a white. The one exception to that is when we've got a lunar eclipse, and then again, because of that light scattering, when the moon is being eclipsed by the Earth, it tends to look kind of blood red.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I even remember that was a recent one too. Didn't we have?
Yeah, there was I believe an eclipse of the moon last year.
Yeah. Okay, well, those were a couple of the questions. I've kept the polls open, and I'll keep my eyes on that while you talk about the moon. Okay. If anybody else has any more questions for you, so I'm going to go ahead and let you take over.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the supermoon today. So our moon is the 5th largest moon in the solar system. Ahead of the moon are Ganymede, which is a moon of Jupiter, Titan, which is a moon of Saturn, Callisto, and Io, both of which are 2 other moons of Jupiter. And so a moon is basically something that orbits a planet. So our moon does not orbit the Earth in a perfect circle. It's a very slight ellipse, which means at times it's closer and farther, okay? And also it doesn't orbit in an even plane. It kind of moves a little bit like you might think of as a wave. So the combination of those two things means that the moon's going to be closer and farther and higher and lower in relation to the Earth. And so our super moon, which happens this evening, and about 8:45 in Central Virginia is when the moon will start to rise. And it's going to be at its closest approach, which astronomers call its perigee, and it's going to be about 221,000 miles away. The farthest approach of the moon is called its apogee, and the farthest approach that we generally gets about 252,500 miles away. So that kind of moon has actually got a neat name. It's called a micromoon when it's at its farthest away. The moon doesn't really change size. It's just how we view it, its apparent size. So tonight it's gonna look to be about 14 or 15% bigger and maybe about 30% brighter than what we might think of as a normal full moon. The main full moon is called the flower moon. Every month has a special name for the full moon, and those names come to us down through history, and some of them have to do with superstitions, some of them have to do with things that happen in nature. For instance, I think the March moon is called the worm moon because the worms come out of the frozen ground in March. The September moon is called the planter's moon because planters used to, before there were lights on tractors, do some plowing and the harvest moon, and farmers would do harvesting in the fall by the light of that full moon. So all sorts of different kinds of names, and very often there is more than one kind of cool and interesting name for a month's full moon. I've sent you a link, I think, that you can send or put on the website so that folks can see some more of these names and some of their kind of historical backgrounds.
I think the cultural background is fascinating.
The one problem with astronomy in the summer is you've got to wait longer for the sun to set. So usually it's not good for observing in the night sky until after about 9 o'clock because it really doesn't get dark until.
So I do have a question going back to the perigee and the apogee. So perigee, when it's closest to the Earth, does it mean it's closest to the Earth in a certain hemisphere for over months and months at a time, or?
No, well, keep in mind that it takes roughly 27 and a half days. So that means that during the point tonight, during its 27-day orbit, it is at its closest point to the Earth. And the other thing that folks might not realize is that the moon and the Earth are tidally locked, which means the same side of the moon always faces the Earth. That's why we've never seen the back side of the moon, which I think was another question that one of your kids had. The only time we've seen the back side of the moon is either by a satellite taking images, or the Russian Chang'e rover is actually roving around on the dark side or back side of the moon right now. So
I love the dark side of the moon. Does that mean it's cold on that side of the moon?
So yeah, the temperature does change quite a bit when it's a day and night on the moon. That was one of the issues that the astronauts had to deal with when they were on the moon. They were always there during a full day, and so they had to have their spacesuits cooled because it was very hot.
But the reason why I asked about the perigee is the fact that we've had super full moons in a row, and for some reason I don't remember.
That's just the way the geometry happens to work. For instance, March was a micromoon. It was that far away situation for the new moon. So it changes quite a bit. There is a repetition every so many years of these patterns, but but not every moon, for instance, in a year is going to be a micromoon or a full moon. It just happens to be the way that the geometry works for that particular month.
Okay, great, thanks. So what else we want to know about our our neighbor?
Let's see.
Oh, I know. Supermoons and tides. I'm sorry. That's another one. We know the full moon affects the tides.
Yeah, the moon does affect the tides, because if you think about it, the moon and the Earth, there's a common center of gravity between them, and so when the moon faces a certain portion of the Earth, it definitely has a pull on water. So yeah, you can. If you take a look at tide scales and the way that the moon and when the moon rises and sets, you can see that there's a definite relation.
I just didn't know if a supermoon meant you get super tides, because it's
yeah, they would be a little higher. Yeah.
okay. So I think that's kind of fascinating. In fact, in the schools, they learn a lot about the bulging of the oceans or the Earth because of that.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting question.
Yeah, the moon. I mean, we can talk a little bit more about the electromagnetic spectrum when we're dealing with light. So we mentioned that the moon has longer wavelengths of light, which are the kind of the reds and the oranges. By the kind of the opposite end of things, you wonder why the sky is blue. So the light coming in, the absorption of the various wavelengths of light and the scattering of that allows blue to predominate, and so that's why the sky has got that kind of a blue color, except on a rainy day, of course. So that might be something for a future kind of talk, is a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. I know most kids in high school have to talk about that, and basically we think of light as on a large continuum, everything from radio waves, very large waves that are as large as buildings, to X-rays and gamma rays, which can penetrate our bodies. The width of the section of the visible spectrum is about the width of this sheet of paper. So there's kind of a lot to learn and talk about there that we might spend some time in.
Oh, definitely. I think that I know in the elementary level that they learn about, like you said, the visible spectrum and bending light and the colors that humans can see. And then we talk about wavelengths going a little further out that humans can't see.
Right.
And I'm sure the adults as well as the kids that are learning that would find that fascinating. And it's a good way to kind of try to remember how, like you said, light is scattered and how it affects the way we see things, whether it's reflection or refraction.
Yeah.
So that would be fascinating. I'm sure one simple question is, why does the moon shine? How does it get that shine?
So if you think about the fact that when the moon is shining, and especially tonight, like a full moon, basically it's reflecting the light of the sun. So tonight, if the Earth's in the center and the sun is over here and the moon is over here, that light of the sun is passing the Earth, hitting the moon, and being reflected back onto the Earth. So, yep.
Is it true that we're losing our satellite? Is she leaving us?
Very slowly, and I can't even remember what the fraction of distance is. Interestingly enough, the Apollo astronauts left a little laser reflector on the moon, and so they can still shine a laser, and the amount of time that it takes to get to the moon and come back is the way that they measure that fact that the moon is getting farther away from us every year.
Oh, cool. That's excellent.
We know that in the poles of the moon, North and South Pole, there is in the craters and in between the mountains are huge amounts of water ice that were probably carried there by comets, and that has been, it's frozen. But if we can find a way to get to the poles of the moon and melt that, we've got hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel, and we can make water. As we melt the ice, we can make water. So all sorts of cool things might be able to happen if we can get back to the moon and do some exploring in the poles.
Oh, excellent. That is a great idea. I hope somebody that's listening might be interested in becoming one of those people to do that, explore our moon like that.
Yeah.
So as far as any, like you said, as the update for the moon might be postponed because of the funding, which, you know, I totally understand. Other celestial things that might be of interest to people, like you mentioned, the craters and the mountains. And, you know, when you look at the moon, it looks like it's just been beaten up in some places.
So I wish I had a thought to pull out a sheet that I could share with you, and maybe I can find one and send you to the link. But some really fun naked eye things to do is to see the rabbit in the moon, the cow in the moon, the woman in the moon. And it all has to do with the way that things are shadowed during the different phases of the moon. Those smooth, darker areas are called the mare. Those are very, very smooth or relatively smooth areas in relation to the mountainous areas. And so very often when it's not a full moon, when things aren't washed out, you get a kind of a feeling of depth and images of, like I said, the rabbit in the moon and the lady in the moon, that sort of thing. So I'll try and send you a link so that folks can see if they can find those during the month. That's kind of a fun thing to do.
Okay, yes, thank you. And last time I did have people ask for the links, although I will have them on our website and on the Facebook page, but you know, if they email me again with any questions and stuff, I can get them the links and then pass the questions on to you.
Okay.
So I guess for tonight, it's just, you know, keeping our eyes on the skies.
Yeah, it's supposed to be clear tonight. And just so, you know, folks realize that a full moon like tonight for astronomers is not a happy occasion, because when the moon is as bright, especially as it's going to be tonight, you're not going to be able to see a lot of the cool deep sky objects. Even some of the dimmer stars will be washed out. So it'll be cool because it's a very bright and close moon, but other than that, not necessarily a great night for seeing other things. Venus will still be up, I think, in the far west, but the rest of the planets are still in the early morning.
Well, I appreciate you coming back by. Is there anything else that you think might be of interest, or?
No, you know, if folks have got an idea for a topic for the next time we do this, have them send you an email, and we'll see what we can do. Always try and send some links out to kind of go along with what we've talked about. So
Okay.
we'll look those up, and you know, just something you know that you could get up with your morning cup of coffee or glass of milk or hot chocolate. Click on the first NASA page that you find. And if you keep clicking, you'll be there for a day or so, just clicking and clicking and clicking, because there's just so much amazing stuff on the NASA pages, and that's less than a penny of your tax dollar. Might work with that sort of stuff. So take advantage of that, especially great animations, great interviews, great stories, great science. So take advantage of everything that the NASA webpages offer.
Okay. Well, I can already think of another topic for next time. You said that, and I go, why did I not ask you about Pluto? Maybe that could be something we could talk about. What happened to our last distant planet and how that came to be, why it's no longer considered a planet.
Oh, yeah,
what
sure.
is it now?
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah.
Okay.
There's even folks that are out there looking for Planet 9 right now, or Planet 10, you know, just all sorts of different things like that. So yeah, that might be a topic for a future.
Okay. Well, thanks, Steve. Appreciate everything that you gave us, the
Okay.
information. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. You're very welcome. Take care.